Which do I think is more important? I don't. You mean for musical theater?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they're all just as important. Don't you think? It sort of depends on where you are in the play, at what moment in the play.
Like, if you want to be on Broadway, which do you think would you go to college for?
Well, the tricky thing is nowadays, you have to be able to do all three of them. There used to be a time when there was a separate singing chorus, and then a separate dancing chorus, and then the actors. Nowadays, and it really started to change in the 70s with Michael Bennett, and now with the advent of chorus line, that's the first time that the actors did it all. They sang, they danced, and they acted. And ever since then, we haven't gone backwards. So there's not really, you have to do it all today. And each generation, I know you're a sports fan because of your skating, right? It's like when you see the Olympics, every 4 years they break the records. The new generations comes in, and then Phelps, and everyone breaks the records. It's the same thing when I watch a new generation. Each generation of singer, dancers, actors are better than the ones that came before them. What the kids do today puts to shame what my peers did in our generation when we were auditioning. It just seems like every generation gets better than the one before it. So today you have to be very strong at all three. Yeah.
And should people try to make it when they're 18, when they just got out of high school, or should they go to college first?
Boy. I'm a bit of a hypocrite on this answer, because I would never tell anyone not to further their education in academia. I just think it would be irresponsible of me. That said, I left college after 1 year because a gentleman named Tommy Toon, who you don't know, but who was very famous when I was your age, took me out of college to do a show called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And I was the first college dropout in my family, and it was very hard for them. But I promised that after the tour was over, I would go back to college. And they're still waiting for me to do that. So it's not that I stopped college to just bum around. I was actually being hired to do something I was going to college to study to do. So it didn't make sense for me to stay in school. Also, I feel like I'm a bit of an exception because I did summer stock when I was 16, 17, and 18 before college. So I had that social growth period of being away from home for the summer, because I think college is very important developmentally for that age group. Your first time for most people away from home, and I think it's valuable. I would say you go to college. I think you should only be in show business if there's nothing else in the world that interests you or that you can do. Because everyone thinks it's glamorous, and it's really difficult. And I try to discourage people from doing it, so the few that have to do it will do it. But if you're on the fence or questioning, I would say you shouldn't do it, because I can't think of anything more difficult than making your living singing, dancing, and acting on stage.
And how did you get your equity card?
My dance teacher was a choreographer for summer stock in Ohio. And Ann Miller was looking for one more dancer for a show called Anything Goes. And so my dance teacher got me the audition, and my mom put me in the car and drove me from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Warren, Ohio. And then it was called the Kenley Players, and Mr. John Kenley was sitting there, and he said, "Do you sing?" I said, "Yes, I sing." And I sang my audition song, and I was done, and he said, "Oh, darling, you don't sing." He said, "Okay, do you act?" I said, "Yes, I act." He gave me a script, and I read my lines, and he said, "Oh, you don't act." He said, "Do you dance?" I said, "Well, yes, I dance," and I did some dancing. He said, "Well, you're an all right dancer. Do you tap dance?" I said, "Yes, I tap dance," and I tap dance for him. He said, "Finally, something you can do." So he hired me as a tap dancer with Ann Miller. Yeah, and that's where I got my equity card. But I had to lie and say I was 3 years older than I was, because I was 16 and he wasn't allowed to hire me if I was 16. So I picked my brother's birthday. It was quick thinking. So equity has me 3 years older than I really am.
Did they ever find out?
Well, now they're gonna know, aren't they?
For non-equity, how do people, do you suppose, make it, like, for non-equity? Because I know that's really hard.
No one knows the answer to that, because you can't get your equity card unless you're in an equity show. But you can't be in an equity show until you have your equity card. So what I do, I can only speak for myself as a director. Any non-union person that shows up at my auditions, I see. It drives the casting people crazy because they try to discourage that, but I don't know why. As a director, I want to find the best talent, and you have to start somewhere. So after the equity calls, I can't do it before that, but when the equity calls are over, I always see anybody that shows up for my audition.
Because I know a friend, she has a website, it's called Anna Wants to Be Mary Poppins, and she lives here. We're gonna go see her tomorrow, and she moved here from Springfield, and her dream is to be on Broadway for Mary Poppins.
She wants to be Mary Poppins?
Yes.
How old is she?
I don't know.
She's about 23.
23, probably.
And how old is Mary Poppins?
I don't know.
What would you think if you were directing the show? How old would you want Mary Poppins to be?
She has the Mary Poppins accent, and she practices singing. Her website's very amazing.
Yeah,
You should.
It's the blog and everything, and it tells all of her reasons why she wants to be Mary Poppins. And she went to an audition, and she was the fourth in line for the non-equity. So, and she got up at she waited there for 3 hours, and
7 hours, honey.
For 7 hours, and they didn't even get to see her, and they finished early.
Yeah, it's really tough when you're dealing with, something like that, which is, an industry like Disney, and there are a lot of equity people. But for those reasons, I try as much as I can I don't think I've ever turned down a non-union person at one of my auditions ever. And I'm not just saying that. It's the reason I'm meeting with you. You know what? The day's going to come, and 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I may be working for you. You could be a big Broadway star and remember this and hire me to direct. Right? Because that next person in 10 years has to be somebody, so why not you? And I had people when I was your age that were very good to me. And so I feel a responsibility to pass that on to people, because eventually you're going to be here and you never know. You just never know. You could be Mary Poppins. They could do the revival on ice, and you could be skating as Mary Poppins on Broadway. Who knows?
Yeah. And since you're a director, what do you think sets people apart in their audition?
Talent, innate talent. I mean, you can study and you can hone your craft, but you either have it or you don't. You have star quality or you don't. God gave you a gift to dance or sing or act. I really believe that. 99% of the time, I know in the first couple lines of someone's song if they can sing, or the first two steps of the dance combination, or the first line of an audition. I think it's talent. I know that sounds sort of generic and cliche, but it's a gift, and you can recognize a gift immediately. So that's usually what separates the people that get the job from the people that don't. It's just an innate star quality and talent.
And how many times have you been to the Tonys?
Wow. How many times have I been to the Tonys?
I saw you were nominated.
Yeah, you know what happened? Before I was nominated, I thought it was cool to go, and so I would go with friends. We would just go and sit up way in the cheap seats and try to afford to buy a ticket. And then once you're nominated, it's so exciting that I made the vow that I would only go to the Tony Awards if I'm nominated or my show is nominated. So just to go there as a fan, I'd rather sit home and watch my friends on TV, because then I feel like you're at once you've been nominated, just to go, you feel like you're crashing someone else's party. So before I was nominated, I probably went 3 or 4 times. Since I was nominated, I haven't gone. I'm waiting until I get nominated again, if I ever get nominated again. Then I'll go. But the older you get, the less important the Tony Awards are, because you realize how political they are, and it's wonderful to win, and you're happy for the winners, but as you get older, you realize there's a lot more wonderful theater being done all over the world, and not just in the 10-block radius called Broadway. And it took me a long time to realize that. So the Tony Award's great, but personally, I just want to be a working director that's doing good work and making people that go to the theater happy. And when they leave my shows, I want them to come back and want to see another show, to keep live theater going, because that's my favorite form of entertainment.
And what was your first big debut as like a director or performer?
Well, which one?
Both.
As a performer, it was a Broadway show called Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and I was one of the brothers, Brother Daniel. We opened on Thursday and closed on Sunday. And my directorial debut was with a show called Tommy Tune Tonight at the Gershwin Theater. But that was really a one-man show with an orchestra and singers and dancers. My first real show was Grease, the first revival of Grease. Not the most recent, Kathleen Marshall, but the one with Rosie O'Donnell many years ago. But that was my directorial debut.
And how do you think you got to direct that?
I got to direct that because Tommy Tune was my mentor, and they asked him to direct it. And he had won 9 Tony Awards and didn't think Grease was a show where he was in his career that he felt comfortable directing. And so he said to the producers, I think it's time for my protege to make his debut. And thank God he did, and that's how it happened. Yeah.
That's lucky.
It is lucky. And I had just choreographed a show for him called the Will Rogers Follies. And my job was to create the dances, because he was busy working with the writers on the book.
Yeah.
So he didn't have time to do the choreography. But he'd already been a very famous Tony Award-winning choreographer. So my job was under the radar as the associate choreographer, was to choreograph the show and win him the Tony Award. And luckily, that's what happened, or I probably would not have been given the chance to do Grease.
Well, thank you.